I'm just going to open with this. If you like platformers, go buy this game and play it. If you haven't already, what the heck? It's okay. No, it's actually a relatively recent game. It's only about a year old at this point. I've already bought the soundtrack because it's absolutely banging. But the game it's really good. It's really good. It has an interesting tone. The overall story is very somber, very morose. I can't really talk about details without spoiling, so this is your spoiler warning. So, the game centers around an idea. There's this afterlife run by a dragon, who's a dick, as most creatures like that tend to be. And there's this essence, which is this ephemeral thing, and it doesn't interact super well with the physical plane. It tends to cause this goopy, violet, mucky, mutated hell death kind of a thing. You know the type. So that's not cool. But it's okay, because it's all nice and in balance. It uses these 5 people, the elementals plus a certain individual, and they help to keep everything in balance between the physical plane and that plane, and everything's cool, nothing's wrong, everything's awesome forever. Problem, hang on. There's this one person who it kind of is a linchpin in this. They call her the Master. She happens to be the daughter of this doctor, who is definitely not inspired by Dr. Wily in any way, shape, or form. She has a serious injury and is on the verge of death. The doctor is like, oh, I could fix that. Oh, that didn't work. Okay, I could fix that. And in the process, he starts scientifically studying this essence. I love this, by the way. I always love it when fiction takes something that's, mystical and magical and just kind of drags it down to reality and says, oh, okay. And through careful observation, understands the rules of it. This is something I've actually referred to several times. Any setting that has a masquerade or tends to have something like vampire ego syndrome tends to follow this kind of trope. Once you understand how it works, well, you can start working around it, can't you? That's exactly what the good doctor does. I should mention that prior to this moment, he'd already come upon an interesting discovery that you could rip let's call it the soul out of people to use as an energy source to power synthetics, these fully autonomous robot things that were helping keep the city going. And yes, it's one of those settings. So these synthetics, there's a little caveat. This is important. So in synthetic life, but the person, the soul energy, it runs out over time. It's fuel, so they need more. Which means you need to kill more people in order to provide more fuel, and you already see where this is going. Things get a little bit out of hand. The doctor gets he does a full one-to-one transfer, which is also possible. You can actually just transfer yourself into a synthetic body, at which point you are that person. That's your soul, your essence, yourself, whatever you want to call it. It's just you've left behind your original body. And the actual current you is like, hey, I'm in a body, and I've extended my lifespan, but I need more fuel. So I need to kill more people to do this, and that's when they started forcing voluntary people to be converted, and, well, it all goes very badly very quickly. One of the things that happens both prior to, during, and over the course of the game, I don't know why I repeated myself there, is the fact that there's no living people left. They've all been eaten, for lack of a better way to put it. So, it's okay. There's other cities that you can spread to. There's plenty of other people we can use as fuel. No problems. That's the world we enter. This has all been because the doctor is, of course, the father of the Master and wants to save his daughter. Very understandable. The problem is he's trying to do it in a way that doesn't really work, so he gets a little bit too desperate. That's okay. That's okay. If he had tried a different route, it might have worked. But instead, the game really portrays this whole idea that giving in to the dragon and dying and going to the afterlife is somber, sorrowful, but still overall a good thing. In fact, the game, we've already given the spoiler warning, ends with everybody dying. And, we ascend or descend or transcend alongside the Master and most of the other elementals. And that is that. It's a very somber, dark, horrific, wonderfully terrifying piece. Some very Metroid vibes when we go through the research lab, when we find what's left of what could have arguably have been called people at one point in time. And I'm describing that very particularly. But it maintains its tone perfectly. The intro doesn't do much to set it up other than just, here's what you got, but the outro does much to pay it off. And there is a lot of visual storytelling going. One of my favorite little details is very, very early on. There's these little turrets. They pop out and they shoot at you. But some of them aren't working properly. They're actually stuck behind the thing. Now, this is brilliant for two reasons. One, storytelling, because not everything's working fine. In fact, I'd say about a fifth, maybe a sixth of the enemies we fight aren't working properly, and that's the problem. That kind of makes them an obstacle. The other reason I like this is this forms part of the tutorial. The game is actually exceptionally well tutorialized for the most part. There is one little caveat to that. In giving you a chance to play with and understand how things work and how things operate, and getting you into the vibe of what the game is like, which I suppose is a perfect segue into talking about the gameplay. So, I've been told this game is hard. I don't believe it. I only died 252 times. But I will say this game, with only a couple of exceptions, is properly hard. This is something I'm very big on and very harsh on. Anybody who's watched me for any length of time knows I don't like artificial difficulty. I don't like binary difficulty. I don't like lazy difficulty. I like you have thought about which enemies should be where because their attacks will coincide with the other attacks and the terrain of the area you've put them in. And that is exactly what this game does. It also bypasses one of the biggest problems I tend to have with games of this type in general. There's no Ninja Gaiden syndrome. For those of you who don't know what that means, to repeat it, let's say here's the edge of the screen. And let's say here's an enemy. So you're over there and you're walking forward and the enemy spawns because it's hit that. And it's like, and you kill it. And you go back a little bit, so it goes back. And then you go forward and then it respawns because you've hit that point again, or just instant respawn off screen. There's actually a gradient here. The actual Ninja Gaiden thing was literally on the screen edge. But in some cases, you walk like a screen's worth of distance to the side and then it respawns. None of that here. The zone lines. If you actually enter a transition screen, that's what causes respawn. So as long as you're on the same screen, everything stays dead. And that's actually very helpful with regards to some of the platforming sections, because it's actually worth it to just clear the room and then be like, okay, let me make these jumps. And that's awesome. One of my favorite little sections, this was actually part of the super optional hidden areas, but one of my favorite sections is, so there's a wall, a ceiling, and a floor, and the walls are mostly spikes. And you hop in, and you hit the thing, and it slowly starts moving up. So you have to move up with it, okay? Okay, that's not hard. It's just an elevator section, but it's fairly narrow. It's relatively narrow. It's a small portion of the screen. And there are spikes, instant kill spikes, here and here and here, in this kind of a layered staircase kind of a formation. So, okay, that's a little bit harder. You have to jump between these things. Remember, you don't actually cling to the wall. You slide down it. So you have to jump very precisely to the top of the safe space, let yourself slide down a little bit. And if you have any issues, you're going to have to re-jump back to the same space. Again, very narrow window of failure. I can't talk right now. I'm sorry, I'm pretty tired. I guess I'm always tired nowadays. Has anybody ever had a good night's sleep, like in human history? Is that a thing? So, you slide a little bit down, so you got to be very precise, and you got to jump over to the other one at just the right thing, and you have to just keep doing this. Hang on. One more niggle. There's these enemies. They're just little enemies. They don't do much. They don't attack you. They just fly down to you, pretty much straight at you. So you're doing this, and there's this guy, and he just kind of flies at you. This completely interrupts your jump arc. So you have to time your jump to be attacking him while you're jumping to the next area, while making sure you hit that precise, small, narrow window of safety, rather than die instantly. Now, I'm not a big favor of dying instantly or spikes in game design. I've talked about this many times, especially as we were covering the Mega Man series. But this is an awesome sequence, especially since it's relatively short. It only takes a few seconds to actually go through the whole thing. Maybe 20, 30 seconds tops. But that is the type of game that is. If I haven't already warned you away with the spoilers in the story, or trying to go get the game, this is the type of game you're getting into. Now, that is one of the hard parts, obviously, but that is the nature of how this game is designed. The game doesn't hold itself back at all. I mentioned proper difficulty, though. Again, a lot of thought has gone into enemy placement. There's a specific section I wanted to jump out here. It's towards the end of the game again. But there's this one portion where there's water underneath you. In the water, there are these mines. And these mines will do a ton of damage to you. They will 3-shot you, okay, from full health. So there's these mines that will roam towards you if you get in the water, okay? So that's rule number 1 established. Rule number 2 is there's this little turret thing, which is shooting slow electric sparks. They very slowly go down, and once they hit the water, the whole of the water gets electrified, and you take damage. So the water, you can actually swim through the water until it gets the electrified, and of course there's the mines to be keeping in mind. Then there's these enemies that do this. They just home in on you, like this. They just go straight for you at all times. Then there's these little enemies. They're much shorter, but they like to do around, and they do a little downwards kind of a shot like this. Hang on, I'm not done yet, because then there's this dude who shoots a gun. I hate this guy, because he shoots this incredibly homing shot. Like, this thing will home in and back around and do like crazy. It's very slow. And you see what I'm talking about. You might think, oh, this is all horrible, but thought is clearly put into the design. This is encounter design, something I praise and preach so much about when it comes to FPSs, platformers, RPGs, doesn't matter, really. RTSs, strategy games. This is incredibly important. Thought was put into which enemies should be where and how they interact with each other and the environment. And that is brilliant encounter design. Because let's look at that, okay? So you can just race through it. If you do a dash jump, get under or over the lightning, jump over, do your second jump, land on the next platform, which is where the guy with the gun is, kill him, do another dash jump in, get a safe platform, walk up, over, you're done. That's a lot harder to do than it sounds, but that is something you can do. You can just run through it. You could try to go up, use this to dash upwards in order to get to an upper platform where you can now make your way across the top area and avoid most of these obstacles. You can just go through the water. One of the things, so when the mine gets close to you or to another mine, it explodes, but you can dodge that explosion if you're quick enough. So you can just get rid of the mines, get rid of the thing shooting the lightning, get rid of all the other enemies, and now there's no obstacles and you just have a nice little swim to the end. And you see the point here. All of these things coincide with each other to have different vectors of attack and different vectors of avoidance, and there are multiple different ways which are gradient. You can mix and match these strategies in order to get through it. And think about that for every screen. It's not a super long game. It took me about 8 hours to get through total. But I'm told that's on the low end with regards to playstyle. I didn't get everything. There were 4 optional items. I didn't get 3 health things and 1 mana thing. But otherwise, I did do everything. Like I said, I did several of the optional sections. That level of encounter design and level design is pretty consistent. There are only a few areas where I was like, oh, come on, really? And of course, what I just mentioned is like the second to last stage in the game. So that might, I don't want to scare you away too much. But again, that is the type of game you're getting into. And the game does this very early on. So one of the first things it does is it starts you off and you have 1 health. Now, I love this kind of tutorialization because the first thing that happens, you have 1 health, you move forward. And even if you don't speak the language or can't read it all or whatever, you know, what I like to call the non-spoken language tutorial, which I've talked about before when we talked about the Mario games, because Nintendo does this very well, is you move forward, there's a little thing there. It looks completely different. So most of the sprite work has dark outlines, as most sprites do in most games. But these little boxes, these little treasure chests, they're like golden glow, so they have a completely different palette from the rest of the area. And they have like an orange or amber kind of an outline. So they literally look different, look like they stand out. So you're looking at that like, Now, automatic inclination is to try and interact with it. If you do, you are likely to attack it, which will drop some health items, and those pop into you. Boom, boom. Red bar goes up. We know and understand several things. We understand how to attack, how to jump, how to heal, and how to get treasure. All of that is done with a single screen and a very careful placement of items and starting status. All of that's just brilliant design in terms of the structure of it. I'm sorry for praising such little things, but I do feel very strongly that a lot of game developers don't tend to think about even these basic things that have been around since the SNES era. I should probably go ahead and mention that the sprite work in this game is phenomenal. There is an excellent amount of attention to detail as well as a huge amount of negative space utilization. There's tons of sections where you see bits and pieces of destroyed building or a train or like some kind of facility or device in the background. And if you actually look at it, very little of it's actually there. And it's only like 1, 2, or in some cases 3 different colors, and that's it. But because it uses the absence of color everywhere where it hasn't bothered to draw the object so well, the eye automatically catches it and says, that's what that is. And you can tell what you're looking at. And this distinction isn't just a part of the visual storytelling, which accents the somber tone I already mentioned, but is part of visual distinction in terms of gameplay design. Like I mentioned with the chest, there's no point in time at which you're going to mistake what you can interact with. All of the terrain stuff, the things you can attack and destroy are either very obviously cracked. They're obviously cracked, or that you can literally see the path past it. So imagine you've got a wall here, right? So let's imagine one part of that wall is like this, and there's a tunnel there. So what you'll see is this, and you'll see just a little bit of space right there. You can see that space, and you can see it it's distinct from the rest of it, and you're through, right? Now, there are a couple of secrets which aren't quite that obvious, but really only a few. And most of those are things that you're kind of led towards. Like, let's say you're going through an area, and you're doing this, and you're going up and you're going right, and there's this one section where you can go down and left instead of going right. Like, and it's just, well, what's down there? Okay, well, what's down there? You go down, you don't really see much, and okay, whatever. But you happen to hit this one thing and it explodes the wall, and it's like, aha, there we go, and you can progress forward. There's a lot of guidance and flow when it comes to the exploration in this game as well. The combat is awesome. I have avoided talking about what I consider to be the best part of this game until right now, because that is the kit. Now, I use this term a lot. Kit's a very generic term on purpose. It's what you have in a video game to interact with the video game. It's the portal gun from Portal. It's the cape from Super Mario World. And it's the espers from Final Fantasy VI, right? That's your kit. That's the tools and fun stuff. It's supposed to be fun. Kit is supposed to be fun. And the more kit, the better kit, the varied kit, the funner kit, the better, right? That's why the kit is its own separate category. In this game, you have two types of kit. So obviously there's your upgrades you get through, and that's your sub-weapon stuff, like the shuriken and anything like that. I'll talk about in just a moment. And then there's the bonus things you get from what we would refer to as equipment. You can actually get a few of those in the wilds, only a few. Mostly you buy those at your mid-mission checkpoint stations. Pause. So there's a lot of mid-mission checkpoints for the most part. They do taper off a little bit towards the end of the game, and I do think they should have been a little denser, especially given how insanely easy it is to die. There were several sections where I would have to go through a section I've already mastered, so I just blaze through it. And then I have to go through this hell level, and then go through the easy, and then go through the hell level over and over again because there was no mid-mission checkpoint between them. But for the most part, the mid-mission checkpoints are actually well designed. But hang on, it's even better than that. So as you go throughout the game, you get this currency, right? I think it's just essence. And you could use that to upgrade the mid-mission checkpoints. What would you upgrade there? There's three things. The middle thing is always the ability to just refill your health to max. The left thing is always the ability to refill your mana, your item usage to max. I'll talk about that in a second. But the right thing, which isn't always there, gives you an option to build a built-in equipment there. So every time you go back you get a refresh on that equipment. This is awesome. By the way, yes, it does. It's permanent. It's just there for the rest of the game. So that saves existence. If you respawn at that save point or you go back to that checkpoint, you get all that stuff back. Full heal thing. Now that costs points, obviously, and you don't have enough points in a normal playthrough to upgrade all of them. So I was being a little bit cautious about how I use them until I got to the end of the game, in which case I would just burn all of them. But what does this have to do with the equipment and the aforementioned kit? So, the kit, in terms of equipment, is you have a thing that makes your blade hit a little farther. That's cool. Then you have a thing to make it so that you have... Oh, God, I'm trying to remember. There's actually several. There's one that gives you this barrier around you, which does damage and absorbs shots. It's probably the best kit in the game. And then you've got a thing which makes it so that it'll capture oncoming enemy shots, like projectiles, and it'll turn them into mana upgrades to allow you to use weapon usage more. I'll talk about it again in just a second. You get something that gives you a shield, which just straight up blocks a hit, and then goes away. And you can also shoot it, and then bring it back, and then shoot it, and stuff like that. You've got a couple other things. Honestly, I'm not going to go through all of them, because the one that really matters is the swag blade. That's actually its name. This thing is brilliantly designed. What it is it's completely separate from you. You still got all your stuff you can do. But there's just this yo-yo that you go around with, and it just follows around you, orbiting you, and you control how much it uses. If you jump up, it follows up, and then it kind of bounces for a bit. If you go to the right or the left, it kind of does this for a bit. If you start doing this, you can actually get it to start doing this, and you get the idea. Just the way I'm doing this, you probably understand innately how this thing moves. And that's the thing. You understand almost immediately, but mastering it is a whole other thing. This is the definition of easy to learn, hard to master, this weapon right here. But it completely changes how you play the game, because all of a sudden your very movement is part of your attack pattern. You see an enemy up here, you want to kind of do a thing like this, because then it'll go, and then you'll get the second one, and the second one will wing up there and actually get the enemy. And it still does plenty of damage, too. This thing is incredibly fun and awesome. My only complaint is that we can't pick or choose between these. Each given checkpoint only has one thing or nothing that you can get with regards to equipment. And there is one other little niggle. We decided not to give this a negative. We debated this quite a bit, twice, actually. So similar to some other games, like some of the Castlevanias, or the Ghosts and Goblins and Ghouls, and whatever else the whole franchise is called, there is a limit to these equipment. The way it works is you have 3 pips. If you get hit, you lose 1. If you get hit a second time, and then if you get hit a third time, it's gone. Boom. You no longer have the equipment. On the one hand, this isn't to encourage you to play well, the whole mastery thing, and this is a hard game. On the other hand, it also rather punishes you for any kind of screw-ups, and it makes it a little bit too easy to lose some of the more fun or interesting ones, especially since some of these are pretty rare. You only get these in like this or this or this spot, and that's it. So I think there's some things that could be done to smooth that out, especially allowing you to, like, for example, let's say you find one in the wild, so now at any mid-mission checkpoint, you could pay 50 to change that checkpoint to that equipment. I think that would help with that kind of a system a little bit. But either way, it is awesome and fun, but I haven't even talked about the other side of the kit, which I've hinted at twice now. And that is the Ninja Gaiden / Castlevania thing. So it's actually based on Mega Man in terms of game design, even though everyone's going to be looking at me like, Lori, you're stupid and insane and dumb and evil and awful and ugly. And those are all true. Except for the evil. I'm not actually evil. But, I mean, I have adorable sharks. How can I be evil? The way this works is in Mega Man, you move through, you beat a boss, you gain an ability. That ability becomes part of your kit and changes, ideally in a good Mega Man game, changes how you fight, how you interact with the enemies and the terrain around you, right? That's these things. So we've got the Shuriken. We've got the ability to shoot up, which also has some fireballs go up. We have the ability to dash, and if you have mana, you can have iframes for doing that. If you don't, so you can actually still slice up, but you don't have fire if you don't have the mana. You can't shoot a shuriken if you have no mana. You can dash, but you don't have iframes. In other words, invincibility frames as you're dashing if you don't have mana. You can have a pogo attack down. If you have mana, it does a big hit. Otherwise, it's just a downward stab. It also completely changes how you maneuver the downward stab thing, but you can see how these are more Mega Man abilities than they are Ninja Gaiden or Castlevania. However, the distinction, and the way that makes them substantially more Ninja Gaiden or Castlevania, is you have an ammo meter. It's the mana. I keep referencing your blue bar. In this case, just like those two games, that is spent for everything. Any shuriken, any upward slice, any downward slice, any dash, any of that stuff, all of that uses up 1 mana. Chunk, chunk, chunk. And that's your thing. Now, plenty of enemies drop mana, and there are specific things that, like the one thing that captures, I want to say ballistics. Bullets and shots in order to turn them into mana, all that stuff. There are ways to get your mana back and to use more of it, but that is your mana pool is all being used within that, so it's all the same thing. And when you get the ability to charge them, they get substantially more useful. So you can see how these two types of kit kind of coincide and interact with each other, but overall the style of approach in terms of design is a little bit more Mega Man, even though the approach to the ammo is more Ninja Gaiden or Castlevania. You also get a double jump later on. You gain the ability to cling to the walls. I already mentioned that. Early on, you have to really rely on essentially nothing because you have a jump, and that's it. The game does a good job of giving you more ways to move in addition to more ways to attack as you go through it. You never really get any defensive abilities per se, with a couple of noteworthy exceptions. You do get more health, but that's it. The way you defend in this game is you dodge better because of the movement kit, or you kill better because of the kill kit. And this kind of fits the overall frenetic and difficult pace of the game. I do want to mention one last thing. So I haven't really talked about bosses. The bosses aren't bad in this game. They're just kind of there. Ironically, one of my favorite bosses was one of the ones I was stuck on for a while, which is the water snake. It's actually a relatively simple boss. Indeed, most of them are. But it was memorable, and it did some good stuff. But the boss I really want to talk about is the last boss, because I gave a negative and a positive to the last boss. Let's talk this out for a second. So first you fight this dude who's like, hey, what's up? I'm dumb. And he is dumb. He is so dumb. He has been crushing on this girl so hard that he betrayed his entire clan to worse than death. Like, okay, I've done some dumb things to impress a girl, but damn, dude. Anyways, so he's a moron, right? And he comes out and he's like, I am the main villain. I am the final boss. I have been your rival since the first stage. And you just Shrek him. He's easy, he's boring, and he's slow. Remember that. So then you fight the second phase, which is actually fighting the Doctor. This is substantially more interesting and fun. What it is you've got a central thing. This is brilliant design, because this is effectively an entire encounter in itself. The central casing, if you hit it, if with a melee attack, it does a knockback. Keep in mind there's wind pushing you from the center outwards at all times, okay? So the more outwards you are, the more you're getting pushed off the ledge and off to your death. So you want to be kind of centwards, but you hit this and it bounces you back, and that can affect your dodging of the many attacks he'll be shooting at you. He only really has 2 types of attacks, but he'll be shooting them constantly, and there are plenty of them. I'll get to that in just a second. But hitting that with anything removes his shield, and then you can do damage to him. He doesn't have that much health. In fact, he has the exact same health as every other boss in the game. Good design right there. You can hit him with anything. In fact, it is brilliantly positioned. So it's right here, and here's the platform. Why is this brilliant? Because this means it's easy to just swipe at him. It's easy to do a charge shot at him. It's easy to hit him with shurikens. It's easy to hit him with the upward slot, and you can hit him with the downward shot. Every attack you have in your arsenal, everything that you can do can be done to this boss because of its specific positioning, smart design. I mentioned the 2 types of attacks he does. So one of them is this little fireball looking thing that'll land somewhere. It kind of homes in on you, but not very, very slowly and not really. When it lands, it's basically an area denial. It shoots up shots at that spot, and they hurt like hell. The other thing is just these orbs, and they have their own arcs. So what happens is they shoot out, and then an arc is decided. It's not always like this. This one can go over here, and this one can go over here, or whatever it wants to. You'll know after a second or two. And they also home in on you a bit. The thing is, you can parry all of these shots, and if you do, well, for example, if you parry the flame thing, it'll turn into a homing shot, which does a ton of damage to him. You can also jump up through the big orbs as they're coming down. You could dash around them. You can literally dash through with the actual dash ability. All of this gives you multiple options for avoiding all of his attacks and turning pretty much everything he does against you back at him. This is a well-designed fight, which is why it's such a shame that the fight right before it sucks. I've referred to this before as the walk back to the boss problem in Dark Souls. One of the things I talk about a lot when it comes to difficult game design, especially something that's designed to be punishing or actually difficult, is you want to do something to make you get right back into the flow like that. My favorite example of that is Celeste. Whoops, I died. You're back. Done. Less than a second. Try again. Hang on. Hang on. Hang on. I approve of that. That's my style. That's my approach. That's how I prefer that. That's why I like to have a save point right before the boss, and why I like mid-mission checkpoints, why I tend to praise all these types of game design. So the problem here is every time you die to any of the 3 phases this boss has, I haven't even talked about phase 3 yet, you go all the way back to the beginning, and you have to fight the apparator again, which is a long, slow, boring fight. It sucks, and it sucks every time because you don't even get the proper mastery time or practice time on the actually interesting, well-designed boss. Because then we get to phase 3, which is even better, actually. And I mean that. So phase 3 is your typical Contra boss, all the souls, it's gross and evil, blah, blah, blah. But the thing is, he's got 4 orbs. They have relatively low HP, so you can break them very quickly. He starts off by sending giant attacks at you, which then land and do area denial, okay? Pretty hard to dodge, but if you focus on those orbs, which I did my second time reaching it very, very quickly, you release the elementals, aka the people that he's been absorbing the energy from. They then give you buffs throughout the rest of the fight. These buffs vary. They're temporary, but each one is very helpful. So he's much further up. A lot harder to hit. One of them gives you a platform to get up to him, and also to dodge some of his area denial. One of them gives you ability to just straight up shoot a fire blade, which does tons of damage, by the way, in a direction you're shooting. The other one gives you a shield, which just straight up negates some of the hits you get. This is awesome. Because the boss itself, again, only has like 3 attacks. One's the big shot, one's the area denial, and one's the flames that come out. But so much is going on that you're paying attention to all of it, and you're being given these little helpers that once again change how you do the fight and change your strategy and tactics on the fly, because there's no set pattern to it. It's just do then this. Okay, this came out this time. Okay, this came out again. We're going to do this, and he's doing his own thing. And it is a very fun, very awesome boss fight, which I would love a lot more if not for the apparator fight that is mandatory right before it. See the problem? But I wanted to talk about that in particular because it is excellent boss design. Apparently this game was basically put together by one person. I'm in shock about that. I would love to shake this person's hand. Just in awe. This is a fantastically designed game, down to its bones. I would love to see a sequel of even half of the caliber of this game. And I hope that they continue doing it at some point. I suppose we'll see. But for now, that's all I've got. Next up, we're hitting Time Spinner, which I know absolutely nothing about, other than it's a platformer that a friend of mine actually recommended, and that's how it got on the list to begin with. So we'll see what that's like next time.